Why are we sending billions to kill people and kill children overseas when we could be caring for our own kids here with free daycare and free lunches? I think that is a basic common sense question that we should be asking our leaders in Congress who are continuing to approve ballooning Pentagon budgets year after year after year. I think there is, at the minimum, I'll call it a conflict of interest. When you are given tens of thousands of dollars or more every single cycle by the bomb and missile and weapons and tank makers, then you are not free to vote your conscience when it comes to approving a defense budget. Because if you go the wrong way, then guess what? You may not return to office. You might not get those donations the next time.
Welcome back to War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. This is very exciting. My guest today is a congressional candidate who is well aware that he's on a podcast called War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Thank you. Welcome, Chuck Park. I think that already says a lot about you and the campaign that you're running.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Orli. I do think that war is stupid. It's also devastating. It destroys lives. It destroys communities. So I think as a baseline, as a title for a podcast, War is Stupid is fantastic. Happy to be on here.
Yes, thank you so much. So tell me right off the bat, what are you fighting against and what are you fighting for in NY-6 representing Queens?
Yeah, thanks so much. So first of all, to situate us, I don't know where your listeners are, but I'm running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District in New York State. Now that covers a borough, one of 5 boroughs in New York City called Queens. And Queens, we call it the world's borough because it is quite literally these communities are the most diverse communities in the entire world. There are, within a couple of square miles, there are hundreds and hundreds of different languages spoken. There are people from every single corner of the world speaking every crazy dialect, bringing their food, their music, their culture, their dance. And so it is this wonderful, magical place where somehow people with such drastic differences are living together and not killing each other. And so I'm running in New York's 6th Congressional District. I was born in the district in a place called Flushing, New York. My parents are Korean immigrants. They left South Korea. I mean, the title of this podcast is War is Stupid. South Korea that was beginning to rapidly industrialize in the wake of the Korean War, an imperial American war in East Asia. And they came in the 80s. They arrived with basically nothing. They worked as street peddlers in Chinatown, Manhattan. And like so many immigrants to this city over many centuries, they scraped by, and through sheer grit and hustle, they were able to feed 5 kids, pay the rent, eventually pay a mortgage. They started a small business. My dad is in his 70s. He still lifts the gate on the front, in front of that small business most days of the week. And they built a community and a life here in this country. And I believe that is the promise of Queens, maybe even the promise of this country. And I think that is under direct attack right now in a very real existential way. I think there are masked thugs roving around the streets of Queens, of all of New York City, but also Chicago and LA. And these masked thugs are driving around in unmarked vans, disappearing school children, moms walking to work or walking to school drop-off, disappearing working people in the backs of restaurants and the backs of grocery stores, terrorizing our communities. And I think that is not just an attack on those people, it's an attack on the fundamental promise of Queens and New York City. So I think the most important thing that I want to do, that I think every leader with any platform should do, is defend our communities against this assault. And then in terms of what we do after that, I think there has to be a forward vision of delivering for those same working people. After we defend them, after we protect their right to be here, we need to build a life of basic dignity for working people, not just in Queens and New York City, but for the entire country. I can take a deep dive into that. But I hope that's a pretty, 2 minute, 3 minute quick answer to your question.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that you say Queens is proof positive that people can live together without killing each other, which is a good segue to tell us about your work as a diplomat.
Yeah. So I was 26 and a little bit naive when I joined the State Department in 2010. I was working a soulless corporate job in Manhattan. And right around that time, Barack Obama won his first term as president. And he delivered this speech in Cairo, Egypt, about resetting America's relationship with the with the world. And, if you recall, or at least I recall, I'm old enough to recall that, there's a really dark period when it comes to U.S. foreign policy in the early 2000s. It was George W. There was a war in Afghanistan, but also a war in Iraq. We were sinking hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars into the death of hundreds of thousands of civilians in those countries. And it also led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American service members. And even to this day, we have very, very little to show for that incredible loss of our national treasure and the lives of Americans, not to mention the lives of innocent people overseas. So we were emerging from that period.
ISIS exists now, so that is something to show for the war on terror.
Right. I mean, if anything, just the scale of civilian death that we caused inspired incredible hatred and anger toward the United States that persists to this day. And so there's these second and third order effects that again, stupid wanton violence unleashed by our nation in foreign lands has created that puts Americans at risk everywhere around the world. I was going to say, anyway, Barack Obama comes in with this inspirational vision for America's relationship with the world. And he gives a speech in Cairo, and I was inspired to join the State Department. And that was the first time I'd really considered public service, when I'd heard him speak about that. And so I took the test. There's a written test. There's a super day of like back-to-back interviews and behavioral assessments, security clearance to get a top secret clearance. Got through all of that. And I got in by 2010. And my first deployment was to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, where I worked as a visa officer. And even as a kid who grew up in a very diverse part of the country in Queens and, exposed to people from all over the world, it was absolutely a culture shock to live on our southern border. At the time I was newly married. I lived in Juarez, and we'd go back and forth to El Paso, Texas, which is this, truly sister city, it's really one city divided by this arbitrary line. But, I worked as a vice consul doing visa interviews, hundreds and hundreds of visa interviews, more than 100 a day on some days, thousands over my time there. And what was interesting is, in those visa interviews, where I was interviewing Mexican nationals who wanted to study, work, immigrate to the United States, in Juarez, I actually met so many people from the United States, people from LA, people from Chicago, people from Queens, New York City. And on the other side of this bulletproof glass window that I was sitting in would be someone who, like me, grew up riding the 7 train. Someone who, like me, had a favorite Chinese restaurant on Roosevelt Avenue in Queens. Someone who, like me, had this love for Queens, spoke perfect English. And in those moments, it just felt so arbitrary that we were on opposite sides of this interview window, and that it was just an accident of birth, just a piece of paper, a birth certificate or a passport that separated us, when in fact we were, me and this person on the other side were so similar in almost every other way. And so there's a very visceral experience of how arbitrary our immigration rules were, and how, just how broken they were. So that was my first posting in Juarez, Mexico. After that, I was in Portugal, and I think this is a connection we have. I went to Canada after that. I lived in Vancouver, the west coast of Canada, for a few years. Yeah.
And also doing visa interviews up there, or just enjoying?
No, so in Vancouver, believe it or not, the United States and Canada, I know we're joined at the hip, but we actually had some pretty thorny trade disputes. So a different kind of war. There's a little bit of a trade war brewing. I'd be surprised if even you know this as a Canadian. Softwood lumber, there's a big multi-billion-dollar lumber dispute between the United States and Canada. Canada grows a lot of pine and other softwood lumber producing trees, and they export tons of it to the United States. And the U.S. industry that grows those trees and sells lumber hates it. So there was a multi-billion-dollar trade dispute that I had to represent the United States on. The other thing I was doing while I was in Canada was just monitoring the activities of other global actors that were trying to wage influence campaigns in Vancouver specifically. I can't talk too much about it, but Vancouver is a particular hotspot for people from a particular place, but not just those people, but government agents from a particular country doing somewhat shady stuff.
Wow, that's interesting. So you've been in the weeds, or should I say in the pines, in the
In the
softwood
pines,
lumber.
in the lush the lumber forests of the Northwest. And then I quit so I joined as a naive 20-something under President Obama, and 10 years later I left as a totally jaded, frustrated, disillusioned 10-year veteran of the State Department under President Trump. And I think we all remember where we were in November 2016 when he won the election. That stupid New York Times
Oh my God, the
probability meter
needle.
was shifting this way, the stupid needle, and then for a few years after, I was working in that consulate in Vancouver, and first it was the Muslim ban, then it was Charlottesville, and it was like crazy, racist, xenophobic, horrible thing, one after the other. And as U.S. diplomats overseas, we actually lose a lot of our free speech rights. When you're in the United States, this is a weird technical thing. When you're in the United States as a federal government employee, once you're off the clock, you can speak your mind. You can volunteer for a political campaign. You can be totally partisan when you're off. That's not true when you're a U.S. diplomat posted overseas. You are always on. And so, I'd be having beers with a friend at a brewery in Vancouver, and they'd ask me about American politics, and I would have to either shut up or repeat those stupid Trump talking points about whatever he was doing. And it reached a breaking point with his policies of family separation. And I still get emotional thinking about it, but we all remember that he was ripping families apart at the southern border, grabbing young kids away, putting them in these jail cells, these barbed wire pens, separating their families. Those kids had no idea where the parents were, and vice versa. And there was this horrible scene in that period of a man with his daughter under his T-shirt, like a black T-shirt. It was clear he was trying to protect her, trying to embrace her. And they're both face down in the muddy brown water of the Rio Grande,
Yes.
which is the border between the United States and Mexico. That picture just hit me so hard because at the time I was a young father myself. I had a kid about the same age, but it just felt like what the hell are we doing here? This person, this mom, this dad and his daughter, they're doing what people have done for generations and generations. They are trying to enter this country to work hard, to find safety, and to build a life, a family, a community. And we are making it so dangerous for them that they will kill themselves in the process to get here. And I remember the next day, the Trump administration's response was, what are you going to do? They shouldn't, get them the hell out. Good. Like, this is what happens, don't try anymore. And so it was right after that I just opened up my laptop, started a Google Doc, and simultaneously wrote my resignation letter from the State Department, and also wrote an op-ed that would kind of explain in a fuller form my thoughts about why I was quitting the State Department. That was in 2019.
You seem so humane and tapped in and motivated by wanting to help your neighbors and fellow New Yorkers. So for people who have lost faith in the political system, do you have a message for them?
I would say it is an incredibly dark period right now. I quit in 2019 under Trump's first administration. And then, I came back, worked for a nonprofit, did some, get out the vote stuff, did some virtual field phone banking into swing states. And I thought in 2020 we won. We defeated this evil Twinkie, and he was going to be gone forever. And things would return to something that seemed normal under President Biden. And the terrible and kind of hopeless feeling thing is that, no, we're in 2025 and it's happening all over again, except in, especially when you look at immigration, most of those horrors were happening on the southern border. And now in version 2, it's in the blocks and the streets of major cities far from the border, in New York City and Chicago and DC and LA. I mean, truly unimaginable stuff a year ago. It's black vans grabbing people, screaming, kicking and screaming off the street. There's no due process, just literally bagging them, disappearing them, shoving them to the back of a van, and then throwing them in jails and then sending them on planes to who knows where. That's happening almost on a daily basis today is it feels very hopeless. I think that what has given me some hope in these dark days, and what actually makes me incredibly proud, is the level of resistance we have seen from normal people. Like, forget candidates for political office. Normal freaking New Yorkers are showing up, showing their middle fingers. They're saying, "Get the fuck out of here." I'm sorry.
No, please.
And it's not just on mass scale. You know, there are huge protests, 200, 300 people blocking an ICE deployment on Canal Street. That happened a few weeks ago. But also you see videos of individual people confronting ICE officers on a random corner in Queens, just shoving their cameras in their faces, telling them to get the hell out of our city. Like, how dare you come into our city and abduct our friends and neighbors? And the crazy thing is, it works. Those stupid ICE agents, they kind of shrink down and then kind of scurry back into their unmarked vans and drive away. And so there's been a little bit of hope and incredible pride for me as a New Yorker that we are showing up in ways big and small to protect each other and to fight back against those raids. I think there's another reason for hope in a place like New York City in the new mayor.
Yeah.
Zoran Mamdani, he is bringing in energy and electricity and optimism about the future of this place, of this city and country. And part of it's about his affordability agenda. Just government should make life better and easier for people. We should bring down the costs of housing, of groceries. We should make transit excellent. We should make buses free. But part of it is also how he ran his campaign. And this is something that I am trying to do in my campaign, which is he ran a 100% grassroots campaign funded by real human beings who didn't just donate $10, $25, $15. They also then showed up in real life and volunteered their time to talk to their neighbors, to knock on doors, to talk to people on street corners about his campaign. I am trying to do the same thing. The person I'm running against is the complete opposite. She is the stereotypical establishment politician. She is powered by corporate PAC donations, by lobbyist money, and by foreign interest, special interest PACs, including APAC. And that is how she has stayed in office for more than 10 years at this point. I believe that she's fundamentally bought and bossed by the billionaires and corporations that keep putting her in office. And that creates a basic, common sense, understandable conflict of interest. So when she takes money, for example, and she takes money from big pharmaceutical companies. She's up in the top 5 recipients of big pharma money from Pfizer, from Bristol Myers. Then it's no surprise that she is not an active voice for fighting to bring prescription drug prices down. When she receives max donations from defense contractors, from Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, it's not surprising that she is also never going to be calling for ceasefire or for peace in the world. When she takes money from Con Edison, and she has, no surprise, she's not going to fight to bring our power bills down. And so I think she is fundamentally compromised because of how she has gained her seat and how she maintains her seat of power. I think we are in a moment now, thanks to Mayor-elect Mamdani, but even before that, where people are starting to realize that this is what has happened, that there was an incredible progress over a century that Democrats made. We were builders and fighters, whether it's the New Deal and Social Security or the Great Society with Medicare and Medicaid Head Start, even up to President Obama with the Affordable Care Act. There was this incredible idea that Democrats would fight for and build a better world, a world of basic dignity for people in this country. And then we stopped dead in our tracks like 15 years ago. And surprise, that syncs up very neatly with when the Supreme Court decided that corporations are people and they should be able to use money as their free speech. And people like the person I'm running against and others in the political establishment have since stopped trying to advance this unfinished project of building a life of basic dignity. Now, thankfully, there are many Democrats left and many people left who still believe in building that better world. I count myself among them, and I hope to do that in Congress.
Fantastic. And yeah, this podcast is an anti-war podcast in particular. So what role does the United States Congress play in perpetuating war across the world?
Obviously, the United States has the biggest military budget in the world, almost $1 trillion, $1 trillion war machine. The National Defense Authorization Act just passed through the House last week. And that approved, on top of Trump's $900 billion baseline request, it added an additional $8 billion that Trump didn't even ask for the first time around, was authorized for this Pentagon, for this defense budget. And the crazy thing is, more than half people think, oh, sometimes people say, oh, you got to protect our troops, you got to take care of the personnel. More than half the defense budget goes to defense contractors. Less than a quarter of the defense budget goes to actual service members, their salaries and their benefits. And so who's getting paid by that nearly $1 trillion budget? It's the Raytheons, the Lockheed Martins, and the Boeings who build missiles, bombs, and everything else, and tanks. I think that is a moral failure because that $900 billion could pay for a lot of other things. Even a fraction of that could pay for a lot of other things besides killing people overseas. For example, this ACA subsidy debate. We got to extend the subsidies 3 years. It's so too expensive. How much does it cost? That would cost to extend those subsidies cost on the order of $100 to $130 billion a year, which is a lot of money, but it's just a fraction of that $1 trillion defense budget. Medicaid cuts, those are on the order of $90 billion a year. National 3K and pre-K free of charge to every single family in this country, that would cost on the order of $30 to $40 billion a year. You can do all of that. ACA subsidies, Medicaid restoration, and universal pre-K, 3K nationally for a fraction of that $1 trillion budget. Let's start with that. Even just looking at the increase for this year, the increase of the last week's National Defense Authorization Act budget, that increased the Pentagon budget by an additional $8 billion. Just that $8 billion increase could give free daycare to 600,000 families through an expansion of Head Start. It could pay for 2 billion free lunches for school children every single year. So what the hell are we doing with this money? Why are we sending billions to kill people and kill children overseas when we could be caring for our own kids here with free daycare and free lunches? I think that is a basic common sense question that we should be asking our leaders in Congress who are continuing to approve increasing, ballooning Pentagon budgets year after year after year.
And because they owe it to their donors, it's a direct line?
I think there is, at the minimum, I'll call it a conflict of interest. When you are given tens of thousands of dollars or more every single cycle by the bomb and missile and weapons and tank makers, then you are not free to vote your conscience when it comes to approving a defense budget. Because if you go the wrong way, then guess what? You may not return to office. You might not get those donations next time. So I think there's a basic, easily understood conflict of interest when you take that much money from the military-industrial complex.
In addition to the $1 trillion Pentagon budget being money that could be in the community's diverse districts like Queens, how do foreign conflicts play out on the streets? Or do they affect the day-to-day life of people here in the city?
They really do. I mean, I'll start with my parents. They came from South Korea in the 80s, and I don't know if people know this, but right after the Korean War, there was a stalemate between South Korea and North Korea. And in South Korea, there was a military dictatorship that took hold for decades, starting with this guy named Park Chung-hee. And it was the most brutally repressive regime you could imagine, killing protesters, shooting them dead in the streets, suppressing every form of free speech and free expression. And at the same time, they were using their national power to rapidly industrialize, build heavy industry. And then, the Korea today exists because of these massive state investments in industry. Anyway, my parents left that and they came to America because, it was getting increasingly dangerous and violent, especially for young people who had some kind of free thought, and many students were protesting. They left that behind and came to the States. That said, even from Queens, New York City, where they landed, they were living in an apartment in Woodside. They would huddle every single morning at the original H Mart. It's in Woodside, Queens. It's about the size of a bodega, a New York City bodega. It's still there. You should visit. They're there every morning, and they wouldn't be talking about their lives here. They'd be chattering and catching up on political news from back home, talking about family back home. And I tell that story to say that because this place is so diverse, because we have people from all over the world, they feel in a very personal way every single conflict anywhere else in the world, either because they have direct family ties and social ties and direct connections still to their home countries, or because they have deep cultural ties to those places. And so as a member of Congress, I think it's your responsibility, if you're representing such a diverse place, again, the most diverse communities in the world, that you try to faithfully represent that diversity. And I was talking about conflicts of interest earlier. I'm a Korean. I'm a Korean American. I would never accept hundreds of thousands of dollars from a South Korea friendship pact. I would never fund my political campaign, sole source, the majority from a single foreign interest pact that's focused on one particular country and one particular relationship. I think it is a problem when a political candidate does that. And in the case of my opponent, she happens to accept high six digits, nearly $1 million most cycles from AIPAC. And without commenting on the American-Israeli relationship, just the fact that a single source gives so much money to her campaign, the majority of the money that her campaign receives, I think that also creates a basic conflict of interest. She's supposed to be representing all of us. The Koreans, the Colombians, the Ecuadorians, Venezuelans, Jewish New Yorkers who care about Israel, absolutely, but also the Burmese and the Palestinians that are here and the Afghans. And when you're accepting so much money from a sole source, then I think that does tie your hands in what you're willing to advocate for. And I think that is also disqualifying when you represent such a diverse place like Queens.
For sure. Speaking as, I know this is a controversial phrase, but as a Jew, the rich diversity of opinion in the Jewish community that AIPAC
Absolutely
actively seeks to squash and silence. Yeah, they shouldn't be louder than anyone, let alone everyone combined. And
1,000%. Yeah.
on your website as well, and you mentioned the National Security Powers Act. Tell us about that piece of legislation.
Sure. The basic idea is right now, a president, whether it's President Obama, Biden, or Trump, can do a lot unilaterally without the approval of Congress. They can mobilize boots on the ground. They can launch dozens of cruise missiles, right now without asking for permission. And they could essentially start what I believe looks like a war. They could launch missiles and bombs and deploy troops. And I don't think our Constitution ever intended for that to be the case. And so that particular law looks to return the power to Congress because Congress is the representative body. It's in Article 1 of the Constitution. It is supposed to be the seat of the power and the body that makes those decisions and decides to take this country to war. So I think that is something that I definitely would support as soon as I'm in Congress, the taking away of that unilateral power from the White House, because we see it being wielded by President Trump. And again, tomorrow, we don't know if he'll launch a war against Venezuela and Maduro. He's repositioning aircraft carriers, spending, I don't know how many billions of dollars to send Americans into harm's way for what? To start a war for absolutely no reason. So that's something I would definitely support as soon as I'm in Congress.
Are there other pieces of legislation, whether they exist yet, that would be on the top of your agenda?
I think one thing I can commit to, and this is kind of it's not affirmatively supporting legislation. It's kind of the opposite. I commit to, in my first term, not increasing the Pentagon budget as a baseline. And that's a pretty low bar. But at a baseline, I commit to voting against any increase to the defense budget. I think there is enough in $1 trillion to do a lot of damage in the world. We don't need to increase it as we were doing this year.
Speaking of damage in the world, do you have a message to people in Queens who are mourning the loss of Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz from the Mets?
Oh my gosh. Look, I grew up a Mets fan. They broke my heart in the Subway Series against the Yankees. What year was that? Was that 99 or 2000?
I think it was 2000.
Yeah, I still go to games. I have endless hope that the Mets will one day win the World Series again. I was, 2 years old the last time it happened. I hope I'm not like 102 the next time it happens. But I think in my lifetime, I will see a day where the Mets win it, with or without Pete Alonso.
Yes. Yeah, I want to hear more about the district. What's special about it? Where should I eat? As a New Yorker, I just love learning about the new places to explore. That's
an awesome question. You can't go wrong with the 7 train. Quite literally, every single stop in Queens is a different world. We can start, for example, close to me. If you go to 61st Street Woodside, you're in Little Manila.
Ooh,
You
cool.
can go to Jollibee, which is a fast food place, but you can also go to the Phil Am Grocery, which is this OG supermarket and grocery that's, at this point, probably 40, 45 years old and was the nucleus of the Filipino-American community in Queens and maybe the East Coast. The next stop over, you can go to 74th Street. And on one side, you have the Bangladeshi community. You can get street food. You can get pani puri. The south side, you have the biggest Thai community in the Northeast, Little Thailand Way, Michelin star rated Michelin guide restaurants at 74th Street Station. Get the Thai food there, get the Burmese food there. Take the 7 all the way to the end to downtown Flushing, and you'll have not just generic Chinese food, but you'll have Fujonese food, you'll have Sichuan food, you'll have every single micro region of China represented in those restaurants. So if you're looking for truly a world tour of cuisine, just take that 7 train, pick one stop a day, bring some friends, get out and enjoy, again, the incredible diversity. I'd also recommend taking the E, if you can, deeper into Rego Park, Forest Hills. There's some awesome Bukharian communities that have some restaurants. I'm blanking on the name, but take the E train to 71st Street Forest Hills, get out and just walk around.
Yeah, what are some of your favorite things you've learned on the campaign trail, in addition to where to eat? Like, what has surprised you about this experience?
What surprised me is how hard I feel like people make it seem, and I'm not sure if it's on purpose. It seems like, oh, how do you even run for something like Congress? There's forms to fill out, there's filings, there's all these compliance rules. But the more I do it, the more I'm realizing is you can run for office. Normal people can and should run for office, that they shouldn't be intimidated. I was definitely intimidated. I felt moved in the urgency of this moment to run, but I was also very scared that I didn't know what I was doing. But in fact, it's not that hard. And that if people tell you not to do it, it's too hard, it's complicated. Oh, you have to, you have to build the right network first. You have to do, do you have fundraising? I would say ignore those voices. If you give a shit and you care about your community and you're passionate and you think you have some good ideas, you can run for office. In fact, it's all these, these like, it's all smoke and mirrors. Like you can just wave it all away and you can do it. I'm about 4 weeks in now. I filed my own filings with the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, to register. You can do it online. It wasn't that hard. My wife is my listed treasurer. I don't have a campaign team. I'm doing my own social media. I can write, a decent press release. And I just made my first hire a week and a half ago, my campaign manager. But, I've been able to raise in 4 weeks or a little under 4 weeks, $100,000, 100% grassroots, individual confirmations, not a cent of corporate money or lobbyist money or whatever. And so it was very intimidating when I started 4 weeks ago, but seeing what I was able to achieve in just 4 weeks, my message would be to anybody, again, who gives a shit, try it, because the people in those seats now, they're banking on you being intimidated and scared. They're trying to make it look hard. They're trying to make it look too complicated. They're trying to turn you off from it. And so don't listen to them. If you care and you have, again, some good ideas and you're passionate, then go for it.
What has been the scariest part? You're great at public speaking. Were you a theater kid, or is this new?
No, it does. I mean, I guess I was a diplomat, so that helped me, speaking. I was actually incredibly shy. So the hardest part for me is I'm like an elder millennial. I'm 40 years old. I'm horrible at social media. I've been a consumer once in a while of social media, but I didn't have an Instagram. I definitely didn't have a TikTok. I didn't have a Twitter. And so I created all that, 2 days before I launched my campaign. And that has been the scariest part for me, like holding that camera
Yeah.
in my own face, recording it. I bought the Rode mic and I'm like, how do I do this? What's the fuzzy thing? I didn't know like how to do basic things like uploading I know there's been a reel and a story and a post on Instagram. I'm learning. So that's been really scary, just putting myself out there in a format and in a way that that's totally foreign to me. But what's nice is people are super supportive, like, oh, you're doing great. And they actually, I think the worse I do, the more authentic it seems. So it's kind of working to my advantage. The worse the quality of the video, the worse the audio, the uglier I look, the more real it is. And it's totally unintentional. I'm not doing, but so I'm doing a really bad job, but it's actually working really well.
That's so funny. That's excellent, excellent practice. And I'm glad people are being nice on the internet. But if you can handle the internet trolls, you can handle the halls of power, the the halls of Congress. It feels like these days, like, what is this government but the internet in real life?
Exactly right. Yeah. 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 Like these trolls that you thought lived in these deep, dark holes all of a sudden are in the White House.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if you saw the Vanity Fair spread and the photos.
Yes. Uh,
They are truly trolls. They are. I mean, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, am I at a respectable distance from the camera? Like, I hope I'm not accidentally giving myself the Caroline Levitt.
No, you look fantastic.
treatment.
Yeah. If I can say that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm glad you talked about the excitement of the mayor-elect and your parents. Who else inspires you?
My parents inspire me. I've inspired by the energy that the mayor-elect has unleashed in this city and country. And this is super cheesy, but I'm inspired by my kids. I have an 8th grader. He's 13. And then it's her child, but just a few weeks ago, we were able to adopt her. And so seeing the world that they're facing, it just inspires me to fight really hard to build a better one, just like my parents did for me, just like I think any parent would do for their kids. And so they absolutely inspire me every day. They keep me grounded. And, I still make sure to read my 4-year-old bedtime stories and tuck her in. I give my older son a kiss on the cheeks and he swats it away. But they keep me grounded and they keep me inspired and moving forward.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I guess 13 might be a bit too young for social media, but to have a teenager in the house, is good, just in case.
To keep me honest, yeah, whenever I think like I'm doing well, or I think I'm cool, I look good, like he's the first to insult me and just like knock me down. So it's a reality check in a good way.
Fantastic. And yeah, what else do you want people to know either about your campaign or the political moment and that we're living in?
Sure. I mean, some things I have to say is, look, if you're in the borders of the 6th Congressional District, the neighborhoods of Woodside, Elmhurst, Rego Park, Maspeth, Middle Village, Forest Hills, Flushing, Kew Gardens Hills, Oakland Gardens, parts of Bayside, please, please learn more about me. Meet me in real life. I'll be out and about a lot over coming months. And then please vote in June of next year, June 2026 in the primary. I hope to earn your vote. Once again, my name is Chuck Park.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and your enthusiasm. It's like exciting to meet someone who genuinely has the energy to take on what is objectively overwhelming and terrifying. So yeah, it's exciting to meet politicians who aren't 1,000 years old.
That too.
That
That is also
in itself is a novelty.
I'm so happy and I'm honored that you invited me on. I had like a great time with this conversation. Yeah, please invite me back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited once you're in, and then we could talk about passing the National Security Powers Act.
And definitely come out to Queens and DM me when you do. Like we can chop it up. We can get momos or some food, anywhere along the 7th train.
Yes, please. And then also baseball season. I should have asked you, can transplants adopt the Mets?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah, I mean, come on. Everyone is a transplant.
Yes.
My parents are transplant. So if there's a team that is accepting of anyone from anywhere, it is the Mets. Just be prepared for a lot of disappointment. But yes, you can definitely be a Mets fan.
Which is also good preparation for Congress, the agony and the ecstasy of a long baseball season.
Yeah, I think so. I hope it's more positive than agony, but yeah, totally.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening and or watching War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Please subscribe, rate and review. Tell your dads. We'll see you next time.